You wake up whenever your body feels ready. No alarms, no schedules, no where you have to. You just sit up, stretch, and ask yourself a single question: what should I do today? For 99% of human history, this was not a dream. This was every morning for 300,000 years, and how we answered that question looked nothing like the life you are living today. Modern humans spend around 90,000 hours of their lives working. That is about 1/3 of your entire waking life dedicated to a job. But for the absolute majority of human history, jobs did not exist. There was no employment, no salaries, no boss, and no career ladder to climb. So what did our ancestors actually spend their days doing? Let's start with what we know for sure. In 1963, archaeologist Richard Lee started a study that forever changed how we view prehistoric life. He tracked the daily routines of the Doju Hansi people in Botswana, one of the few remaining tribes still living in a way that mirrors pre-agricultural human life. He discovered that adults spent about 2.5 days getting food. That's roughly 17 hours. The rest of the time, they did whatever they wanted. And here is the fascinating part: this pattern shows up everywhere anthropologists look. The Hadza in Tanzania, the Aik in Paraguay, the Martu in Australia. Totally different environments, different continents, same exact result: about 15 to 20 hours per week spent on daily survival. For context, you probably work double that. Now, some of you are thinking, but those are modern people. How do we know ancient humans lived the same way? Fair question. And the proof comes from bones. When archaeologists compare ancient skeletons of early humans to farming ones, the difference between them is massive. Farmers were shorter. Plus, their bones show clear signs of malnutrition. Their teeth were absolutely ruined by cavities from grain-heavy diets. They even had arthritis in their spines from constant physical labor, and they died younger. Meanwhile, earlier humans had taller, stronger, healthier skeletons, cleaner teeth, and less joint damage. They tell a clear story. They were actually doing less repetitive, back-breaking labor, not more. But the most mind-blowing proof comes from something archaeologists recently uncovered that shouldn't even exist if survival was a constant struggle: art. In 1994, explorers stumbled upon Chavet Cave in southern France. Inside, they found paintings made roughly 30,000 years ago. Horses, lions, and rhinos rendered with depth, shading, and real movement. These weren't just crude stick figures. This was highly advanced art that required serious skill, planning, and most importantly, time. Someone spent hours, even days, deep inside a cave by flickering firelight, painting these animals on the walls, not for survival or food, but for beauty, for meaning, or just something to do. In Blombos Cave over in South Africa, researchers found 100,000-year-old perforated shell beads with tiny holes drilled right through those shells, clearly designed to be strung together as jewelry. The closest beach was 20 kilometers away. Someone walked 40 kilometers round trip just to grab those shells, then spent hours painstakingly drilling holes with stone tools to look fashionable. In 2008, researchers found a 40,000-year-old flute made from a vulture bone in Germany. 5-finger holes, spaced perfectly. The maker clearly understood music. They really got pitch, and they spent serious time crafting it, not for hunting or defense, but for music. These aren't just isolated discoveries. Across Europe, Africa, and Asia, ancient sites dating back 100,000 years are packed with evidence of decorative items, expertly crafted tools, way more detailed than necessary for survival, along with items taking hours of deep, focused effort with no practical payoff. This is what people did when they weren't chasing dinner. They designed, they decorated, they made things beautiful. Let's map out a typical day. Picture waking up at dawn. The fire from the night before is smoldering. Someone tosses on wood. You grab leftover meat or fish from yesterday, maybe some nuts and wild berries gathered the day before. Breakfast is social. People chat. They casually plan out their day, not because they have to, but because they're human. By mid-morning, a small group heads out to hunt or forage, but here's the kicker: you don't go daily. If a hunt succeeded 2 days ago, and there's food stored, you stay put. In camp, you might spend the morning crafting tools, sharpening a spear, weaving a basket, or scraping animal hides to make soft, usable leather. This isn't work like we know it. There's no time card, no boss. You do it because skill actually matters, because mastery earns respect, and because creating things beautifully is part of being human. When a hunt happens, it's not the frantic chase you see in Hollywood movies. Our ultimate persistence hunters, we track prey at a steady jog for hours until they overheat and drop. We're the only species built to do this effectively because we sweat and can cool our bodies down while running. Other animals cannot, so we outlast them. The hunt takes 3 to 6 hours, including travel. Then the beast is hauled back and butchered. Everyone eats by early afternoon. Though the heavy lifting of the day is pretty much done, what comes next is what modern folks find hardest to grasp: nothing, and yet everything. People rest, they lounge in the shade and chat, playing with the kids. They groom each other, sorting through hair, strengthening bonds. They craft jewelry out of shells, beads, or animal teeth. They etch patterns into bone and stone. They nap. Anthropologist James Sussman noted that among the Juwansi tribe, adults spend around 6 hours daily in what he labeled social time: no work, no sleeping, just hanging out with folks, talking, laughing, and swapping jokes. See, in a world without cash, or police, or signed contracts, your survival depends completely on your relationships. If they don't like you, they won't share food with you when you're starving. So, you invest huge amounts of time in those connections, not to be productive, but because it's how we stay human. Then, the sun goes down, and that's when something remarkable happens. In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner analyzed hundreds of hours of recorded chats among the Juwansi tribe. During today, topics were strictly practical: who saw tracks and where, which plants were ready to harvest, gripes about someone not sharing fairly. But at night, around the fire, 81% of conversations became stories, myths about how the world started, tales of ancestors performing impossible feats, jokes that got everyone laughing, and adventures from far away. Wiesner argued that this is where human culture was truly born: gods, spirits, the past, the future, things you can only imagine. Mostly when your belly is full and you feel safe. Back then, people did not sleep in one long stretch like we do today. Old records from medieval times, Europe, and research from the 1990s prove that before light bulbs came along, humans slept into chunks. First sleep lasted about 4 hours, followed by a wakeful gap of 1 to 2 hours in total darkness, then a second sleep for another 4 hours. So, what did a normal day look like? Maybe 4 to 6 hours hunting for food or crafting gear, around 6 hours of hanging out, sharing stories, keeping clean, playing, then 8 hours of sleep into split blocks. The rest was resting, sitting, watching clouds, doing absolutely nothing at all, just living without needing to prove your worth through constant hustle. Then, 10,000 years ago, everything changed. People in the Fertile Crescent started sowing seeds and raising livestock, but farming was a total trap. Once you grow crops, you can feed more people, but more mouths require even more food, and more food demands even more farming. Within a few generations, the population exploded, and there was no turning back. Now, they had too many mouths to survive on wild plants and game. They were trapped, and farming required far more backbreaking labor: plowing, sowing, weeding, harvesting, storing crops, and guarding them from pests and thieves. Ancient skeletons prove it clearly. Those early farmers worked way harder, ate worse, and died younger than the wild foragers who came before them. Yet the population just kept booming, and with those massive crowds came specialists, builders, artisans, weavers, inventors, then soldiers, rulers, managers, and eventually, formal jobs. Suddenly, your own time belonged to someone else. In trading labor for resources, by the time we built massive cities, the natural human lifestyle completely vanished, replaced by rigid schedules, duties, and endless work. Most of your waking day just to survive the very system we built. Today, you spend 90,000 hours working. Your ancestors worked way less. You sleep in one block and call waking up at 2 a.m. insomnia. See, they slept in 2 phases and used those middle hours for quiet reflection. You spend life chasing an illusion of status, empty achievements, wealth, and success on society's terms. Invented, they woke up each morning, already free, already enough, and at peace with absolutely nothing to prove. They never needed to become successful. They already lived the life you are working your whole existence to retire into. You only make art if you find time. After your shift, they made art because they had free time. That is what humans do. We are not a different species, but we live so differently from how people lived for 99% of our history that we might as well be. We traded freedom for food security, leisure time for population growth, and time for productivity.